Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Mr. Nixon. Wanted to give you just a quick overview of what to expect with the lecture exam. The lecture exam is, yes, I'm looking at the lecture exam. The lecture exam is about 70 questions. Um, it's like five matching, and the rest is multiple choice, true or false questions. Um, the test really it tests how well you understand processes. Um, so some of the questions are like short and sweet, like which of the following is not an attribute of non-specific defenses? Which of the following is not an attribute of specific defenses? Um, those kind of questions, they're kind of straight up. But then there are questions that get a lot deeper. So I'll give you an example of immunity questions. Like there are questions to test your ability to know the difference between a T cell and a B cell, specifically like a cytotoxic T cell and a B cell. So if you know the difference between those two cells, then it should be all good. If you don't know the difference between a cytotoxic T cell and a B cell, then that's problematic. Um, it's kind of hard to narrow stuff down. Let me give you some examples here. So um, think about how does each cell contribute to the immune process. Like, what does a neutrophil do? Well, a neutrophil attacks bacteria. It's a phagocytic cell, and it attacks bacteria, but it doesn't have memory. So the way that it helps with immunity is limited. A macrophage engulfs pathogens, but when it engulfs pathogens, it displays a fragment of that pathogen on its cell surface using an MHC2 class 2 protein. So it does um, help with the immune process in its own way. You have B cells. B cells must come into contact with the pathogen. They have to come in contact with an antigen fragment. Otherwise, they cannot produce immunity. They won't make an antibody. And that's the thing. B cells, they activate into plasma cells, and then the plasma cells, they create immunity. Um, you have helper T cells. Helper T cells don't attack anything. Helper T cells are all about contacting other cells, activating other cells, releasing cytokines and activating other cells, attracting other cells. That's what helper T cells do. Cytotoxic T cells. Cytotoxic T cells look for infected cells and put them out of their misery. They attack and destroy infected cells by releasing chemicals like perforins and other cytokines that cause apoptosis, which is cellular death. Then there's antibodies. We talked about the fact that B cells turn into plasma cells and then they produce antibodies, and that antibodies are specific for the antigens that they were created for. There were five types of antibodies, and you want to go back and you want to look at what we said about those: the IgGs, IgAs, IgEs, IgDs, IgMs. Um, I'm not expecting you to know a whole lot about the antibodies because we did not talk about a lot. We just talked about really unique attributes about the antibodies, like what has to happen for them to show up. Like, for example, IgGs are the most common antibodies that you're going to see. IgMs are the ones that form agglutination. That's like their claim to fame. They cause agglutination because they have like 10 parts to them that attach to random things and lock them together. So IgMs are really good against bacteria, things like that. You want to understand processes. So if you haven't gone to watch those animations, please go back and watch the animations and take the quizzes after the animations. You need to do that. Okay. Watch the animations. Remember, I sent you the links. They're already on Blackboard. Go to the links. I sent them back. Hold on. I sent those links. Working on it. I sent those links on March 11th. So go back to March 11th. Check it out on Blackboard. Um, Also, remember that whenever I post something on Blackboard, it always sends you guys an email. So just go and pull the email from your school Gmail, and you'll see the links in there. They are McGraw-Hill animations, and the person talks on them, and they talk way slower than that dude on YouTube on Crash Course. And if you watch the animation, pay attention to what's happening in the animation, because I will ask questions on the test, and you'll be able to answer those questions if you think back to the animations and if you take the quizzes after the animations. If you do that, you're going to get a lot of questions right on this test. Okay. Because I understand that this crap is hard and it's very difficult, and there's a lot of information and it's a lot of weird words. But if you go through the animations and you take the quizzes, it'll help you to understand that this is actually a sequence of events and that I need to understand the sequence of events. So do that. Also, make sure you go through the Word document. Remember, I sent you an 8-page Word document outline of the notes for immunity. Make sure you go through that Word document, because that's going to help too. I did pull questions from that Word document. You will see them on the test tomorrow. And they're really simple questions, like literally pulled from the document. I'm not trying to make anything sneaky or anything like that. It's just testing your knowledge of how well do you understand immunity working. I mean, if a bacteria shows up, who do you think is going to be the first one on the scene? If a virus shows up and it gets inside of a cell, what do you think is going to be your body's response to that? And how does the body respond to keep things out? That kind of thing. And I think you'll do okay. For respiratory, we didn't get a chance to cover everything that I wanted to cover in respiratory, but we did cover a lot. So first and foremost, you need to know the 3 gas laws, just hands down. Are there going to be a lot of questions about the gas laws? No, because you can't really make but so many questions about the gas laws. So don't study the gas laws for like 5 hours. Please don't do that, because you're only going to see like a handful of questions on there about the gas laws. But you need to understand how air moves. Like, how do we get air inside of us? Well, we said that atmospheric pressure is constant, and that we manipulate gases. We manipulate the movement of air and the movement of gases by manipulating pressure. And we can manipulate pressure by manipulating volume. So everything we do is to manipulate volume so that we can manipulate pressure, so that we can manipulate air and gases. We can make air and gases move if we manipulate volume and pressure. Also, when you're going back to look at respiratory system, make sure you watch that video that I showed before we left. It was a 2-minute video. It was actually, if you're going to be, itsy witsy about it, it's like 1 minute and 55 seconds. Make sure you go back and you look at that video. It's the one that talks about the muscles that are used for breathing. So familiarize yourself with that video. If you haven't watched that video, we talked about that. It talks about how you manipulate volume and pressure. Make sure you look at how we use partial pressure, how oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuse and move back and forth. Make sure that you go back and look at how we use hemoglobin in the movement of gases and how we make air move. Pressure gradients, go back and look at that. I would probably say that 60% of this test, I say about 65%, maybe 65 to 70% of this test is immunity, and about 30 to 35% is going to be respiratory system. So that's how that will work. There was an animation that I sent you about respiratory. It's a McGraw-Hill image animation. If you type in McGraw-Hill animation respiratory system, it'll pop up in Google, and you'll find that animation and watch that animation. There's a little quiz that you can take afterwards. I would take that quiz. Just saying. And answer those questions and think about how we got air into our lungs, how we got oxygen out of the lungs and into the blood. Then what did we attach oxygen to so that it would travel through the blood? Then how did we get oxygen out of the blood, carbon dioxide, and the rest of the air out of the alveoli and into the atmosphere? Okay. It's going to be just like that. So um, I think this test is kind of interesting because this test is really straightforward, and sometimes a straightforward test can be kind of tricky. So what I'm really asking you to do is I'm really asking you, if you have not started studying at all, um, you need to go through those animations and take those quizzes. Definitely. Like that needs to, if you're like all-nighter, animations and the quizzes need to be on front and center. And then the Word document. Do not attempt to sit up all night and memorize the Word document before you've done the animation and the quizzes. I cannot stress that enough. And when I say quizzes, I am talking about the quiz questions that occur directly after the animations. I noticed that when I brought up the quizzes yesterday, some of you were asking about the Connect quizzes. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the quiz questions that appear at the bottom of the screen after the animations that I sent in the links on Blackboard. Those are the ones. Make sure you can go through those animations, you understand what's happening in those animations, and you can do those quiz questions after those animations, and then go to the Word document, and I would cut it off right there. That's as far as I would go. The only thing you need to like review over that's not in that stuff is looking at what the 5 antibodies, what's the most important attribute about each one of those 5 antibodies. Like, when would they show up, or why are they unique? That kind of thing. Outside of that, that's it. Straightforward, to the point. It's a lot of material to learn. That's why it's best to start with the animations, because it puts all the information together. If you've already been studying, which several of you have, you've been talking to me about what you've been doing to study and everything, then, go with what you know, use these animations to quiz yourself. And that's all I got, man. We're at about 12 and a half, going on 13 minutes. So hopefully I will see you guys successful and well tomorrow. Deuces.